Okay, so after a few iterations with the client, this is the model, the final model, which we've all agreed to. You'll see when you actually see the space, things make a bit more sense, but for the client, this makes perfectly good sense. So we have this actually giant concrete wall in this house, so that's why it's so large. So I've designed this island. We'll also be making this dining table. That will be a separate thing. So this is the drawings that the client gets. Like I said, we've gone through a couple of iterations. We've settled on all birch plywood fronts, and we're using a black high pressure laminate on birch plywood for the tops. So once the deposits come through, I've priced this up. The client's happy, I've got some money. I can now actually work out how to make these cabinets now that I have all of the appliances that the client has already bought. So what I do is I copy and paste some of these cabinets across over here, and I make very simple drawings of how the cabinets are actually going to be built. This one in particular, so this is that same wall we're just looking at. Got the overhead cabinets. This is going to actually incorporate 2 cooktops and a pop-up extractor fan. Because we've got a concrete wall at the back, we can't put an extractor hose through that one because it's actually an internal wall anyway. So we're going to run our ducting through the floor and out under the house. I spent probably 6 hours yesterday working out how to make this cabinet to make everything fit. It's quite complex. And this is my sketch of the bench top. So we've got 2 cooktops. We've got a gas cooktop and an induction cooktop, and this is the pop-up extractor fan, and there's about 9mm clearance for everything, so we're right on the limit. This bench is already wider than normal. It's 700 deep instead of a 600-ish. So with these drawings done, I can then just measure straight off here and go and start cutting plywood. So I work out ahead of time how many sheets I need to rip and at what width, and do everything I can at the same time with the saw set in the same place. And then I can work out what pieces need edged, and I can do that. So this is a carcass with the cooktops in it. So I have a solid bottom panel, and then everything sits on top of that, and everything is screwed in place. Okay, so wherever possible, I like to have a full panel of plywood as the base. That way everything is sitting on top of that. I've seen some flat pack units where the verticals are screwed or doweled to the ends of the base panel, and it means all the weight is really only on 2 or 3 little dowels, which is not ideal. So it's much stronger to have a full base plate. So what I've started doing recently is using the same material as the carcass for the back panel. And I used to use like a 6 or 7mm MDF or plywood, and I found it's just much stronger and easier generally to use a thicker back panel. It means I can screw right into studs or anything like that, right through it. In this case, because of the way the extractor fan is working, I have to have an 18mm back panel. It's just going to make life way easier anyway. So that's what I'm going to do now. Putting a piece in this orientation is a bit out of the norm for me, but some people do build their carcasses this way. The main purpose here is that it allows some extra strength supporting the bench top when we cut these giant holes out for the 2 cooktops and also the the extractor fan, we've got to add some extra supports in there. And I think I mentioned earlier, we've only got about 9mm clearance from inside of this piece to where the first cutout is going to be for the cooktop. So putting a piece in this orientation really helps. Generally, if there's nothing on top, if there's no cutouts for cooktops or sinks, things like that, I generally put a piece in that way, and they'd actually sit on top. But this way works for this carcass. Because of the two large holes in the top for the cooktops, I need to add a central support to support the weight of the bench top and what's on it, in between where those two cooktops are. So that's what all this is. This is a big impeller, going to suck air down through this. Once this thing pops up, air can get sucked down. We're going to focus the output straight through the bottom of the carcass. So I'm going to pre-drill my hole in the carcass now while it's relatively easy. The upside to using pre-finished plywood, like a melamine type thing, is that at this point I could just start installing drawer runners and start finishing it off. This being plywood, I'm going to give it 2 coats of water-based polyurethane, and then I'll be ready to move on to that step. Alright, so I just made this overhead unit to go above where the cooktop and that's going. I thought I'd just check in and show you that I've managed to make it 100mm too short. So that's pretty cool. I better go and make that again. I can keep my verticals, but all the other parts have to recut. So I've carried on making all the carcasses for the island, and this is the space where the dishwasher is going to fit. So instead of making some kind of weird carcass for that, just using my lamello connector to connect the 2 carcasses together over top of the dishwasher. Once that's in place, I can start adding the show panels of the birch plywood to the front of the island. Next thing to do is cut the drawer fronts and the doors. This big panel is going to be cut up and grain matched for the panels where the cooktop is. In the meantime, we had the CNC cut out these grooves in the large end panel on the left hand end of the kitchen, so I just needed to clean them all up by hand, and then I could start clear coating that and all the other parts that were ready. This is a push to open rubbish bin drawer system. A little bit finicky to install by itself, but it works pretty well actually. With that installed, I can take measurements of exactly where I need to drill holes to attach the front, and there's some slight adjustment on there, so it's not too bad to get it working correctly. With the clear coat done on all the carcasses, we can put the drawer runners in and assemble the kit set drawers. Now, I always use a story rod to find the positions of the hinge locations, so it just makes everything line up really easily and perfectly. The client didn't really want handles on any of her doors, so we used these push to open pistons. It was time to sort out how the sink was going to fit into the island, so I just made some allowances for that to happen before we started working out the top. Right, for the hinges I've chosen to use this Logica system where as you press this lever down it forces a wedge into the dowel and holds it in place. The reason for this is because they're quick and you don't see any screws, which is nice. You don't want to use these hinges if you intend to have to dry fit something and then take it all apart for paint. They just don't like to come back out. You end up bending bits. So it's the kind of thing you use once, snap, done. Got some very cool bits of hardware. What's cool about this system is these two holes I just drilled are little locators, and there's a couple of little, you can't really see them, but there's a couple of little what amount to dowels, little plugs that stick out, and they fit into those two holes. Okay, time to cut up these giant sheets of birch ply with a matte black high pressure laminate. It's 25mm thick and that's very expensive but very nice looking. It's always a bit nerve-wracking when you start drilling and cutting massive holes into a perfectly nice sheet of plywood. With the cooktop bench area all secured, we could then fix in the range hood or the extractor fan and get the impeller sorted out and work out all the wiring for that as well. With a bit of a sigh of relief that everything actually fitted in the spots they were allowed for, we could plug in the extractor and make sure that works. So the sink fits. I ended up having to take out the overflow drains to get this in, and then I'll have to go in once the sink's in. I'm not pushing it down hard because it's got some little catches around the side here, and I don't want to jam it in just yet. And I had to make these little kind of pockets here to allow for the overflow once the sink's in. So we're now on site trying to get everything installed, and it's always a bit tricky as to which end you start at and what has knock-on effects to what if we start making changes. So we were underway with the fridge unit. Walls and floors are never exactly square, so we had to scribe some of the large panels that sit on the floor. This is the second time we lifted this wall unit up. We had drilled through and put wall anchors into the concrete, and now we're screwing through into those anchors. Alright, so one of the problems with doing kitchens is that we're so far away from the workshop that whenever something is not quite right after the install day, things take time. So just putting up these top pallets. The one that is here needs trimmed slightly. I didn't bring the tools because I didn't anticipate having to do that. So I have to go back to the workshop to do that. The other thing is these doors. The client is not super happy with the push to open function here, mainly because I've had to put the push to open piston down at the bottom because there's no room up here where the cooktop is, and so sometimes they don't function. So what we're going to do is something else. So I have to take these doors back to the workshop along with the ones under the sink and recut. We'll probably end up doing a 45 on the top of these doors, and I'll have to cut kind of 30 mil off the top and then add a backing plate here so you can't see through into there. So another comeback, which is not great, but trying to get it right. Alright, so it's about a week later. I've cut the doors down and I'm going to screw in these panels. Alright, that's a wrap for this kitchen. The house is not quite in a state where I can give nice, beautiful final pictures. It's a bit of a shame, but that's the kind of thing that happens in real life. So the dining table, which I made, is going to sit right here. Unfortunately, there's some other work going on the flooring over here, so we can't set that up. I can't take all the finish film off all the HPL plywood, because the builder's still got trades coming in and out, he doesn't want that exposed, so that's fine. Generally, I think everything worked out really well. I'm pretty happy with it, even with the couple of comebacks that we had. That was fine. So I think that's a wrap. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you on the next one.